Today is an MLK holiday unlike any other. We're honoring the late civil rights leader for the first time since the racial justice protests that gripped the nation. What would Dr. King have thought about what happened here over the spring and summer? Is the movement carrying on his message? And after the riot at the U.S. Capitol, where does our divided country go from here? I ask a local thought leader about that as he works to educate, motivate, and keep pushing forward.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His name is synonymous with the nonviolent protests that secured civil rights for Black Americans in the 1960s. But as we celebrate the King holiday in 2021, our country is on edge. Marcus Mundy, executive director of the Portland-based Coalition of Communities of Color, says King's message is needed now more than ever.
His message was one of basic fairness and peacefulness, which is something we haven't seen in the current protests, but he was looking not for extra, not to slice anybody out of their opportunities. He was just looking for fairness and equal opportunities for all.
Justice. The cry also went up nationwide last spring after the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police.
Everything that they were fighting for in the 60s, better housing, not to be killed by the police, better opportunities, better education. Even though those marches in the spring were predicated on another killing of a Black man, they wound up being about all of those things as well. So I see direct comparison between the two.
MLK condemned the use of violence, but Mundy thinks Dr. King would have loved the peaceful demonstrations centered around social justice.
He would have loved that it was led by young people because his movement was led by young people. He was a young man, actually, at the very beginning of that movement. So he would have loved that the movement was determined, decided, designed, developed by young people. And he would have loved the fact that they were relentless. He would have liked that they just kept going and kept their eyes on the prize.
But after the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th, where does the country go from here? Mundy says he's hopeful that King's words will win the day, but he's also cautious.
We go to healing and reconciliation, but we cannot have that without acknowledgement and some repentance. You know, you're not going to get better unless you acknowledge the sins of the past. And we have a whole raft of sins of the past. People say, don't look back, let's just move ahead. We must look back. We must acknowledge what happened, never forget it, and then begin to take steps forward, but one small step at a time.
Accountability. You're hearing a lot of people say that these days. Very powerful words.
Yeah, no, a lot of people have the day off, Brenda. Did he say anything about how we should be spending the holiday today to honor Dr. King?
Yeah, he did. Actually, he's hoping that we can all take a moment to reflect on what happened in the last year and why. And then he issued a challenge.
Oh, what kind of challenge?
Well, what he wants everybody to do is listen to 3 different kinds of media, right, left, and center, and see if you can recognize what you're hearing in those spaces. He says we have got to have better streams of information and communication, not just one stream, because as he told me, that's partly how America got lost.
Yeah, it's good advice for everyone. All right, definitely things to think about. Thank you so much. What a wonderful story on a perfectly wonderful holiday.